Welcome back to Ojai Stories. In this episode, I'm joined by Joe Johnston, innovator, business owner, and self-described dreamer-doer, as my guest. Joe comes from a family of inventors dating back to the creation of the KitchenAid mixer and is one of the most self-aware people I've ever met. He knows his strengths and how to leverage them to make amazing things and places. Hi, welcome. Joe Johnston, CEO, innovator, creative thinker, one of the brightest minds I know for sure. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Dana. That's very kind of you.
I'm so happy to have you. So one of the things I'd love to start with is, who are you? Where did you come from? I know that it started with a KitchenAid mixer.
Well, as you know, talents run in families, right? And so my great-grandfather started KitchenAid Hobart, adding motors to kitchen equipment, electrifying kitchen equipment. It was in the time where basically adding electric motors was like the semiconductor industry is today, where you were using that to make life better, make things easier, make home life better. And so he developed those things. He went to Ohio State University. He was in the electrical engineering department, which was super early. He knew the Wright brothers. He was the first quarterback for Ohio State. Very clever guy. I mean, we cannot live up to his amazing accomplishments because he was a very accomplished man. My grandfather then worked for the company. My dad was an outlier, thankfully, because he decided he wanted to work outdoors. And so he became a farmer, hence us growing up on a farm here in Arizona. I myself am an engineer. I like designing things, and I like creating all kinds of things, because you know very well that we've done creating of like spaces, communities, and I also create products. And so just that whole process of creating stuff is something I'm very fond of.
I love that.
Yeah.
So paint a picture for those who have never heard of Gilbert, Arizona. Your mark is undeniable, whether you're driving in downtown at the Heritage District or in this area where we're at right now today filming this podcast, which is called Agritopia and includes a new development called Epicenter. Tell me a little bit about that. What influenced kind of that community space building and how it's evolved over time?
So for those who have not been to Gilbert, which is probably most people, it is the largest town in the United States. They've kept that name town because it connotes perhaps a friendlier place, a more intimate personal place where people know each other. But it's grown from, like when I was a kid, it was like 5,000 people to something now that's way over 250,000 people. It's like the fourth largest municipality in the state. Super vibrant, great demographics, very young. It's an exciting place to live. And I've always loved Gilbert. It's always been an appropriate and fun place to live, even when it was 5,000 people. And then when we opened our first business, it was 60,000 people. And so we've always just enjoyed the vibrancy of it, the quality of the place, and kind of the agricultural work ethic of like, yeah, let's work on this together and let's do quality work and let's do it together.
So what was that first business? What was that? And what was the catalyst for that coming to life?
So my very, very first business was not in Gilbert. It was actually a chain of coffee houses located by Arizona State University. I really enjoyed coffee. I had a friend. We decided to open a business because we felt as though coffee was not represented in the Phoenix area at the time. And so we started doing roasting, did a coffee house. It became the busiest coffee house in the United States. Of course, ASU is a huge university, so that certainly helped. And it was centrally located, so it was like the perfect storm of things. And so we did coffee houses and did more and more coffee houses. And then I sold the company because one of the things about being an artistic person is you're usually not very good at managing people. And the more employees we had in our organization, the more I hated our business because we went from like 0 to 150 employees in like a couple of years. It was just like so distressing. How are we going to get out of this?
Yeah.
So sold it. And then the new company wanted to open in Texas. And I saw barbecues in Texas. And I thought, wow, this would be a cool next business. And they were always in these long brick buildings in like old downtowns in Texas. And then when I came back and drove through downtown Gilbert, I had driven by this building like forever as a kid going to coffee break. And there was this long brick building. And I said to myself, Joe, that is a barbecue building. That's a barbecue building. And so talked to the owner, which at that time was a church, and said, look, would you be interested in selling? And they were. And so opened the barbecue, and it became kind of an institution in Gilbert. It became something that comported very well with the demographics of family and gathering and fun. And so that was the first one.
Amazing. I love that you talk about how you get that inspiration from other places and infuse it kind of into the life in Gilbert. And I think for me, what I've seen you do is make this place feel incredibly unique. But it's because of those experiences you've had that have given you those ideas. So that starts, and then what comes next even after that?
Well, Dana, you make a really good point about inspiration, because there's no really new idea under the sun, right? And so travel, and I know you're a well-traveled individual, and you've lived in cities, and you've seen different ways that life is lived. Traveling influenced all of that, as far as like going to Texas and seeing what a barbecue, what is barbecue? What does it look like? I found that out there. I learned a lot of things having gone to school on the East Coast and the West Coast, and just traveling and understanding there's a lot of ways to do things, and then figuring out, well, how would you apply those basic principles to the benefit of the community? And so the next thing after that was a place called Agritopia. So the idea there was our family farm was in the path of development. And the most common thing that's done if you're a farmer is you usually sell and move out further because you enjoy the farming lifestyle. They like the country, they like the open air, they don't like density. But we decided what we wanted to do is stay involved with the process and actually influence the land and how it's going to be developed. And so having created a community within a building, which is exciting, to create community within a village, that is like the best clean sheet of paper like project you can ever have, right? And so we decided we're not going to tear down any of the existing buildings on property, the homesteader's house, sheds, things like that. We'll just readapt it for the use of the local community. And we also want to make sure that what typically happens of having the agriculture completely go away didn't happen in this case. So we made sure there was urban agriculture, and that's a whole thing of trying to figure out what is urban agriculture? How does that work? What benefits the community? So just started designing that.
I grew up in Gilbert as well and left and went to the East Coast. And I remember seeing on NBC Nightly News, your farm stand was featured. And I left Arizona in 2001. So right before probably a lot of this development happened. And so I was like, wait a second. That's Gilbert, Arizona. Like, that's where I'm from, you know?
Hometown.
And that was my first awareness of what you were doing. I thought, what a really cool idea. So explain that piece of it. Some of those interesting components, I think that you'll find here in Agritopia that you can't find really anywhere else.
I would agree with that. I mean, you can find components at different places, but the concept of an agrihood, which is a neighborhood that's focused around agriculture instead of around a golf course or some sort of other amenity, and what makes a really, really good village, whether it's a vertical village on the Lower East Side or whether it's a village in rural Japan or wherever, what are commonalities that make for good village life? So we just tried to work through all that too and make a really, really good village.
And you're constantly improving on it, which I think is really interesting because that had to be 20 years ago that I saw that piece. And since then, you've done so much, especially here with a new development called Epicenter. And I talk a lot about innovation and having spent over a decade in government and feeling at times, why is this so slow to move? And, you know, how people's perspectives might be too small because they don't get out or far from home enough to understand. And we need people like you in leadership positions and visionaries of communities and cities and placemakers to help us to continue to evolve and move forward. And I think one of the problems probably with all American cities is, you know, you get people to come in, like you said, maybe with farming too. They set their sights down, make that change, set the vision, and then they might move on to something else. You've started something. What's really interesting to me is that you continue to create and evolve it. I remember walking through the Tyler, which is an apartment element of the new Epicenter complex, and you talking about how you had created experiences for people who were no longer going to the office every day, but were using remote work post-pandemic. And that you were thinking about how people were living and how they were working.
Yes.
And you were creating spaces for both. I think that is so unique and yet so critical and vital. There's a housing crisis in this country, and the business offices left never filled again after the pandemic.
Right.
So talk to me about, as a thinker and innovator entrepreneur, and how you continue to take a vision that you might have had 2-3 decades ago, and how you're constantly shifting because the world is shifting and you go with it.
For sure. After we sold the coffee plantation, I took a year off as a sabbatical. And one of the things we did is we took our boys to Costa Rica to study Spanish. And part of the program was you stayed at a house with a local family, and then you would go to coursework during the day, and then you'd come back and live a Tika life, you know? And one of the things that every house there had its own like little side gig. Basically, the idea was it was such a vibrant street and such a vibrant area because commerce and living were all blended together, and it wasn't like separated like it is here in the States, you know? So that's why we built in the concept of you can have non-family member employees, you can do this, all the stuff that you couldn't do by code previously. And so that gave people the flexibility to stay at home and work. And then thankfully, as time has progressed, the concept of work and what jobs can be done remotely has gone crazy, and it's been awesome to see. And so we've just tried to create gathering spots, you know, starting with like the coffee shop over here behind us, to other spaces where people can gather and work and be working, and yet there's like a buzz behind them so they feel like they're engaged and they're not alone. And it's always morphing. You know, if you set up the village right so it's not fragile, people will make their own way.
Absolutely. But you've found ways to work within it. And I think that's what's interesting. And sorry to say that the pandemic is what forced most of the country to think about some of those things. But you've been thinking about those things well before that. And so this idea of placemaking and community making, that we don't have to leave it obviously to government or developers necessarily, but without the vision at the top and someone willing to take risks, try things that have never been tried before. Everything you do looks different. And one example of that would be an ice cream shop you opened in our downtown area with a large gopher on the top of the building. I remember the outcry on social media. What is this thing, when you were like, you know, lowering it in with a crane in the middle of the night? Tell me about this. And does this pop up for you like in the middle of the night? I'd love to know too. Tell me how you tick. How does your brain work? And like, where do your ideas come from?
Well, I'm a big believer, Dana, in the idea that there's a lot of good things in the past, and there's a lot of good things in right now and in the future. And so if you can kind of blend those together, that's a good thing. The way I tick is I like to study the past, study classic design. When we did this here, I did a lot of reading about the way towns used to be planned and why suburbia had issues related to design and related to the rules of the game. And not trying to reinvent the wheel here, but trying to just apply those in a modern way. We built the barbecue.
Joe's Barbecue, which
Joe's
is,
Real Barbecue.
if you haven't been to Gilbert, Arizona and visited Joe's Real Barbecue, you're missing out. You must do that.
And that was opened in 1998. And the intersection that it's on, which is basically Gilbert Road, which is like the old like main road through town when I was a kid. And it's on the main intersection for the Heritage District. But then as development happened further north, the 50-yard line got moved up one block, essentially. There was more development north of it. So I started thinking to myself, like, sales are starting to fall off a little bit. There's more attention up there. We need to call some attention to our area down there. And I started thinking to myself, well, Joe, you know, on Route 66, there was, you know, dinosaurs. There was all sorts of like wacky stuff to make people pull over, or the kids were nagging them to go pull over. And I thought, oh, well, that's what we should do. We should do something that, like when you're at the intersection, you should look down and say,
what is that?
What's that? What is that? Oh. Then I thought to myself, Joe, down here, there's never going to be any fast food. They don't allow any drive-thrus, but people want to wander around the downtown. And so we need some portable food at a reasonable price of high quality. So I started thinking, well, what should it be? So how about burritos? People love burritos.
And not just a burrito with Fritos in it,
yes,
by the way.
Yes, Fritos in it.
Which you can't get anywhere else, I feel like.
No, and then we designed the ice cream cones. We chose the colors and flavors based upon Instagram. And
I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Oh, that's awesome.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, that's amazing.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Because nowadays, as you know, the Gram and TikTok, they help market something like crazy.
Absolutely.
And then
Smart.
we started thinking about what animal should it be. On our farm, we never had livestock. The animal that still bothers us today, that's still here, is the gopher. And the gopher is cute. It's a little bit, a gopher is a nemesis. It really is. I mean, it causes a lot of trouble. Mm-hmm. And so we thought we'd do that. And we did a Stetson Open Road for its hat because, I'm a hat guy. And the Stetson Open Road is like American classic. And so we put the topo up there, which is, of course, gopher in Spanish, close enough.
Love it. And the eyes light up and change colors.
Eyes light
and
up. Oh, yeah.
It's just, and it did exactly what you intended it to do.
Oh, yeah.
There's never not a line.
No.
Even in 110 degrees.
Yes. Yes.
When your ice cream is melting, but who cares? It is brilliant, amazing. And that is just a perfect example of where you were never willing to sit and just let an idea that you had in the past try to live on forever, but you're constantly thinking of how you could draw new attention to it. Tell me about your customer service philosophy, because I think that the core of what you talked about, bringing community together, and I know what you do is, bringing people experiences that give them delight. What is your thought behind that, and how do you approach a lot of your new restaurant ventures specifically with how to deal with customers?
Oh, it's super easy. So the customer service experience is very simple. So our basic goal is to take really good care of our employees. That's our basic theorem, is like if we take great care and treat our employees right, then they will take care of the customers.
I love that.
Isn't that simple? I mean, it's like a super simple thing, because an employee that doesn't feel loved and doesn't feel like they belong, it's going to be really hard for them to serve from the heart, It's going to be really hard.
So how do you do that?
You just treat them kind of like family. There's still kindly discipline. There's respect, love in a certain sense, looking to, as people, what are their needs? What are they going through? That sort of thing. Trying to work with them around schedule, around family situations, just trying to make sure that they're respectfully integrated into the businesses and not considered replaceable or anything like that.
It really shows when you go to any of your establishments.
But one thing I also have to point out, though, is since I'm more like the visionary and none of them report to me, I'm very fortunate to have partners that were on the same page, and they execute that. And then they make sure that the next level down, like our general managers and our kitchen managers, are on the same page. I don't know how to manage people. I know how to manage ideas and projects and stuff like that, but I really appreciate my partners and then managers below them that know how to manage people.
How do you ensure that your vision can continue to evolve and live on well past your time?
Well, my role is pretty much vision, making sure we're on the right track and moving in the right direction. And so while I don't run the businesses, I observe them and work with my partners to see how the vision gap is going. And if we're still trying to close the gap, or we're going forward, we're going up instead of like starting to fall off, we're good. Because there's going to be differences. Reality just doesn't allow for you to actually achieve your vision. But the vision should drive it. So I'm just trying to instill that into my boys and other people.
So we've talked a lot about the successes you've had.
Yeah.
Talk to me about failures, maybe ideas that you had that maybe still have never come to life, or ideas that you tried that didn't work? And what did you learn through that process?
Well, I do think, Dana, that in business and in life, perseverance is a big deal, right? In life and in business, there's a lot of obstacles that if you give up easily, you're not going to achieve them. But on the other hand, it's good to know like when to quit. So, and you're not really a failure if you quit. Because I went to the Naval Academy and I thought for sure that I was going to be a nuclear submarine officer. I went on board between my second year and third year on a nuclear submarine for a week outside of Long Island. And you know what? I got on that submarine thinking this is going to be my career. The day I got off of it, I knew I was like, this is like crazy. I've got to stop this. And so got out of it. And it was a disappointment to a lot of people that I just like quit. But I knew that this would be a miserable life. And you only have one life to live. And so I thought, I'm out of here. And like a coffee plantation. I mean, we sold coffee plantation. Remember I told you how miserable I was? It's like, I could have stayed on in misery, weeping, but why? You know, I said, we got to sell, we got to go. And it had a big downside because coffee plantation, basically the people we sold it to, they were not bad people. They just had a different view on how employees should be treated. That was actually the core thing about how employees should be treated and what was important. And it imploded. So it's sad to see something that you built and put a lot of effort into implode, but it's life.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, I can definitely relate to that. And you're right. Building something amazing, I guess it goes back to my question about what the future is. You really can't do anything about that, right? When you're no longer here.
Yeah,
and then sometimes knowing when to walk away is
Certainly.
so critical. And I think it's risk taking, right? And talking a little bit about that. And so I'm just so grateful to know someone like you. And I think for our listeners, there's probably a lot of people that we always talk about live the life that you dream or that you imagine, but you really talk about being motivated by your passions. And I can feel that in what you do. And I think that's so critical to so much of your success is how you infuse what you're passionate about into everything you touch.
Yes, but I will say this, Dana, there's a person missing in the room, Cindy, my wife. You know, and so I feel like we're only getting half the story because she and I have completely opposite giftedness. I'm very much big picture vision optimistic. She's very like detail oriented, and risk management is more of her cup of tea. And so with us together as like this integrated unit, that's where a lot of the success comes from, because she told me after we sold Coffee Plantation, she said, Joe, you're not doing anything further than 10 minutes from the house. My wife is very smart and she's very talented. And together, we make a very good team.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The two of you together are absolutely amazing. And I think that yin and the yang that you talk about, when you throw those crazy ideas out, you need someone to tell you.
And I know at first she's going to say, that's a crazy idea, or that, Joe, that's not going to work. Or, have you thought of this and this and this? But usually she'll come back later and say, well, I can see what you're saying there. She makes a lot of the details happen.
It doubles the innovation almost together when you have a partner like that, whether it's your business partners, like you mentioned, or your spouse or whoever that might be. And so you're right. You can't do any of this alone.
Well, and that's a key thing. I think we've talked about it, Dana, that in the United States, or at least for some of us, we think that independence is like the highest goal. In my experience, being interdependent is what is really freeing, because then you only have to do what you're great at and work it, and let the other people do what they're great at and work it. And we just got to be on the same page, and we just get the team together that's got all the pieces, and that allows you to go on vacation and have
sleep at night.
Sleep at night, because honestly, I don't know a lot of the things that go on. And I appreciate that because it gives me the bandwidth to do the things that I do need to do.
Amazing. So is there any big idea that you haven't done? And I know I asked you recently, it's like, can somebody stop asking me what is next, right? Like,
Yes.
why does it seem that when you are an innovator, it's like the job is never done, or there's always got to be that next bigger, brighter thing? But is there anything that in your lifetime you'd love to see come to life? Or do you feel really satisfied? I mean, I think you should, about everything you've built. I
feel pretty satisfied, and we're in a season of savoring it right now. For me personally, it's the process and the enjoyment and serving the community and showing stuff that they may not have seen and that they can enjoy. I just enjoy the process and working with people that we enjoy working with.
I love it. Well, thank you for creating experiences and places that we all get to enjoy. I've been able to see all of this from the ground up and experience it and get to reap the benefits of all of the vision that you had. So very grateful.
Well, I appreciate you over the years being a cheerleader and also in your communication related jobs, that you have been a big booster for the town and for people like myself and others that are working hard. So I appreciate that.
Thank you, Joe. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to end on a fun, quick, rapid fire.
Okay.
What gets you out of bed in the morning?
The alarm clock.
Ooh. Perfect. What advice do you have for future entrepreneurs or business leaders?
It would probably be perseverance, because I make a habit personally of making sure that people persevere if I'm going to pour into them anything. And so if they don't, I normally don't answer emails immediately or text messages from somebody new that says, hey, I want to come pick your brain, which I hate the phrase pick your brain. They have to do it 3 times. Because if they only do it once and then they go away, it's like, okay, cool.
Love that.
But if they persevere, persist for 3 times, it's like, okay, we'll meet up. Okay.
The 3-time rule. I love that.
Yeah. I mean, because otherwise if they just fall off, it's just like they're fishing and then they move on to something else. It's like, okay, cool.
I love it.
Yeah.
So you wear a lot of hats, literally.
I do.
Tell me what inspired quickly the hat, because you've got a look so people might be listening and not seeing you.
Yes.
And you always have a hat. You're always very well put together, of course. But tell me the hat. I love this.
Dana, this is very simple. I'm a man without hair. I used to have hair. I really had really nice hair. When I had nice hair, I didn't wear a hat. Now I need to put something on my head. And so the hat is the ideal thing. I don't wear caps, because there's way more styles and things you can do with hats. It's just basically a little sun protection, a little style, and now it's morphed into legend, I guess.
I love it. Yeah. Speaking of hats, too, you wear so many of them. How do you get it all done?
Well, that's an interesting question. I just do it sequentially. I don't stack things. That's a stressful situation. I don't run projects overlapped on top of each other. So if there's a major project, that's the thing I focus on. And anything else, I push it off to the end, or push it off to the side, or put it into the stream. Because once I start stacking stuff on top of each other, I can feel stress. I can feel like you get that hamster wheel where you can't get it out of your mind. Mm-hmm. And so that's not helpful for anything. And in my experience, most things don't really have a hard deadline. I mean, not really. They don't. People put it on you oh, well, we got to get it done by June of 2024. But in my experience, 2 years later, if you finished up in August of 2024, nobody really cares.
Okay, final question. We talked a little bit about this with your travel, but what inspires you?
I love travel, and I'm a major travel planner. It's probably FOMO. If you ever see my travel plans, I'm always afraid I'm going to miss out on the thing that I should see. I'm always planning it because I get to experience it up front through YouTube and Google Maps and reading. And then I get to experience it in person. And then I get to experience it through photos and memories of it later.
I love it. Thank you so much for joining me. This has been such a lovely conversation with you. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Dana. Appreciate it.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Ojai Stories podcast. Please leave us a 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice, and stay tuned for more episodes coming soon. And visit our website at ohaicommunications.com.